Fabius. I don't think I will get behind you.
Hello, my fellow hunters, and indeed my fellow pickers of the correct weapon. It's a new title update, which means it's a new chance to make Greatsword extra great, and boy, does Gogmazios deliver on that front. Both from a power increase perspective, because are we gaining some numberage, and as we all know, we live for the numbers. If the numbers not go up on the Greatsword, then life not living worth happiness. And indeed, for the actual hunting of Gogmazios with the Greatsword, it's very, very satisfying, and being able to block his super yourself is just that extra cherry on the cake. I absolutely love this fight. I love how they have brought him into Modern Monster Hunter, and I am really enjoying the Gogma Artian weapon system. There is a lot to be gained from it, and it's not actually as ridiculously RNG as I expected it to be, though it is still quite RNG. Which means we're going to have a fair amount of sets to go over here, because there's various stages of perfection, and I totally understand anyone that just is happy going far enough. Even a completely un-RNG, pure-crafted, no-Gogma weapon shenanigan set is still a meaningful damage gain over Title Update 3, and that's really, really cool. But for those of us that do want to push the boat out, the extra set bonus potential on a Gogma Artian is ridiculous, especially for Greatsword. Being able to essentially have our damage cake and eat it too is opening up worlds of fun, and the sheer raw we can reach is kind of silly, honestly. So ultimately, we are going to be having quite the fun time as we progress this new endgame treadmill. And indeed, Title Update 4 buffed the Greatsword. Both the raw and the elemental motion values for charge slash, strong charge slash, and true charged have gone up. This is great because if you are facing Gogmazios, you do kind of want to bring a dragon Greatsword. It makes the final phase much smoother. Generally, honestly, against like the ultra endgamey 9.5s and such, the ever-reliable Sleep Artian is still ever-reliable, but now especially, there is more and more justification to be bringing counter-element Artians depending on what you're facing. It's not like a crazy big deal, this is still Greatsword after all, but it's something to think about. In any case, for me, the first Gogma Artian I made was my dragon one for the purpose of farming Gogmazios more. And just getting that raw increase, especially on the true charge slash, is really tasty. Between that and the new power of gear in Title Update 4, we are hitting some absolutely monstrous numbers, and it's nice to actually have the true charge encouraged again. And to hit you with some numbers, we tested the Greatsword before the patch for a comparison, and using the base 100 raw Hope Greatsword as a nice little tester, the full true charge combo with no outside influence helping it did 514 damage. The true charge did 208 of that. After the update and the buff, it does 542 damage, which is about a 5.5% gain from the full combo, and the true charge goes up to 224, which is about an 8% gain on true charge itself. If we look over at Element specifically, using the Gogmazios Greatsword, which also has 100 raw attacks, so it's even to the Hope, so any extra damage here is purely from the Element. Pre-patch, the full combo did 539, so just a little bit added from the Element, but after the patch it goes to 575. So essentially, pre-patch, Element added in this instance 25 damage. After the patch, 33 damage, which is quite the little tune-up on Element. These are small numbers because we're using small baby greatswords, but scaled up, this starts to become noticeable. The Element true charge was 216 and it went to 234 after the patch, exact same conditions otherwise, about an 8.5% gain. Now, the reality here is it's the motion values under the hood that have changed. Every time you swing a weapon in any given attack, your damage is multiplied by its motion value, anywhere from like 0.1 on your jewel blades up to like over 2 times on some greatsword attacks. But for a rough, kind of quick and dirty feel for how this buff has affected us, essentially, it's a fairly decent 5% or so overall damage gain, with most of it weighted in true charge, which is what you want, and Element is having a appreciable but not crazy greater effect than before, which is why it's really not a bad idea to Element counter monsters if you can be bothered having a perfect Artian in every element, but certainly against Gog, bring that dragon greatsword. In any case, let's get on to weapons. Shadowbringer was the king in a post-Arch-tempered new Udra world, enabling us to use a resentment set that hit very hard. Darkside, of course, giving us an extra 13 average effective raw, turned this into a 233 effective raw weapon, coupled with new Udra unlocking that resentment potential. It finally outdid Artian. But it cannot outdo Gogmazios. So say goodbye to Shadowbringer. We had fun. But it's time for the slab. The chained up power that is Ostrak Oblivion. This right here then has 254 base raw, which is absolutely ludicrous. Yes, minus 10% affinity does kinda suck. That represents a damage loss on the base weapon without any sets involved of 2.5%. But make no mistake, having a starting raw of 254 is nutty cuckoo bananas. And this isn't even peak. To our current understanding, that attack boost 2 could be another attack boost 3 for another 3 raw, taking us to a 257 base raw greatsword. So, yeah, Shadowbringer just isn't competing with that, even with the resentment advantage for how easy that makes it to pile on some extra raw. And in case you are wondering, yes, attack focus is the way to go with your Ostrak Oblivion. This thing at 254 comes out at an effective raw of 327, allowing for the sharpness and the minus affinity, which is ridiculous. Artian before only just crept past 300, not to mention, of course, the triple 3 slots and, you know, the extra set bonuses. It's really hard to properly put across just how powerful these weapons are. So while there's no mathematical doubt that Gogmazios is the way to go now, do we want attack focus or affinity focus? Well, to cut a long story short, we want attack focus. I've run the numbers through both affinity and attack across fully built sets, and attack always comes out on top. And that makes sense, because it's much easier to get massive amounts of affinity with Wex, maximum might, latent power, than it is to get extra raw in our typical builds. And even just looking at it here, gaining 10 raw for minus 15% affinity still just edges out to the raw, and then losing 10 raw for an extra 10% affinity isn't worth it in the slightest. So we do want to be hitting that attack focus, and we still want to be keeping the classic perfect Artian rolls, being 4 attack and 1 sharpness. The sharpness there is more than enough for us, and ideally then you want to hit 2 times attack boost EX and then 2 times attack boost 3. That said, if you have a Artian that is 3 attack, 1 affinity, and 1 sharpness, if you have 2 attack EX, 1 attack 3, and then 1 affinity EX, that is almost, like it's so imperceptibly close to the full attack to level 3's 2EXs, so technically what counts as a perfect Artian is relaxed a little bit thanks to this system and not being able to make everything EX. Now, to note, in order for your Gogmatian weapon to be definitively better than any Shadowbringer build, it needs to hit a raw of at least 248. So that's your kind of leeway, around there, above 245. Once you've got it to that level, you are good to swap to it and start using it. So if you've not quite got an Artian that's up there at that 245 plus attack, then you can keep using the old Shadowbringer set until you do, but once you do, well, the entire rest of this video awaits you. We'll come back to the active skills and what set bonuses you want to roll shortly, but as I said, having a dragon one is a pretty good idea for Gogmazios farming, but sleep is also still ever reliable for just generally monsters getting those big hits, though less reliable the harder and more resilient and higher up the star level you go with monsters. And that minimum sort of 248 base raw Gogma Artian is what I'll be doing for all the maths that are coming up. In reality, because you can reach much higher than that, the actual EFR we've gained is going to be higher than the highest EFR the maths will show today, so the gap from Title Update 3 to Title Update 4 is even bigger than the colossal divide it's already going to look like, so make sure to keep that in mind. So Gogmazios Armor itself is sadly not going to be making an appearance here, because Greatsword is simply too congested on what it requires. There is an option to explore a second wind avenue for maximum might uptime, but truthfully you can get much more out of, well, what I'm about to show you, and still maintain maximum might uptime through the methods we've been talking about, essentially throughout Wilds' life cycle. In any case, mutual hostility doesn't beat out the other set bonuses we really crave, and bottom line, we need Lord Soul because, well, more than ever, increasing our base raw by 1% is important with how high our base raw is, not to mention, of course, that your Arch-Tempered gear is just really, really strong and efficient. We need 2-set Bale because we have to be firing out those energy waves, as it represents on average a 10% damage increase, which is absurd value for a 2-set, and then that leaves us in a situation where before Gogmazios weapons, well, there's nothing left to think about there. It's 3 pieces of Arch-Tempered, 2 pieces of Bale. Now, because the Gogmazios Artian can allow for a piece of Lord Soul, it can allow for either a set bonus of Bale or something else, we can get a little bit more creative here. But the set bonuses that we might include, and essentially what Gogmatian weapons do for Greatsword, is let us add an entirely extra 2-set on top of 2-set Bale and Lord Soul, but none of that is going to come from the actual Gogmazios armor, sadly. That said, it is still an absolutely incredible armor set, and it's such a fun concept to see it like this with all those set bonuses. There's definitely going to be a lot of weapons that do get a lot of joy from some mix and matching here, and that's really neat. But in any case, for our purposes, sadly not. So let's get into the sets then, and as a reminder, this was our previous best Greatsword build. It used True Shadowbringer, it used Resentment, the Arch-Tempered new Udra, and really was kind of fabulous. These were the decorations, and just so you have a reference point as we go through the new sets, this came out at an EFR of 520, plus the extra damage from the Bale 2-set waves. So 520 is our bar to clear here. So the first set then is going to be your full no RNG, only crafted set. There's no Gogma set bonus rolls required, there is no RNG talisman required, it's the best Greatsword set from just straightforward you can make it, there's no chance involved. And I'm going to just slowly ascend in both power and RNG/grind time as we go through the 5 sets that I now need to talk about. But first and foremost, the weapon remains your 5 critical boost, and then your focus and handicraft in your Gogma Artian. The actual armor then is your Ray Gamma, your new Udra Gamma, your Bale Bale gauntlets, your Ray Gamma Waist, and your Bale legs. This gives us that Lord Soul and Dark Arts, and a nice little base of 5 latent power, 3 weakness exploit, 3 max might, and a couple bits of resentment that don't really do much. They're not even going to be in the calculation, because without Shadowbringer it's just not worth it, and then counterstrike. So if we get this fully decorated up, we end up finishing weakness exploit, latent power, and, well, maximum might and counterstrike. Now, we also have 2 agitator, as we have 2-3 decoration slots, so it's kind of the next best thing. Now, this will be a running theme throughout all of these sets, but anywhere there is just bonus agitator because there was leftover slots, you can replace one of the agitator for burst, and in a lot of situations that will add more effective DPS to the build, but in this case I've just left it as 2 agitator because it looks neater on the skill list, but 1 agi, 1 base will do better in most situations. In any case then, this is it. It's fairly simple, there's not a lot in leftover utility space, but it gets the job done. And remember, in order to swap to this, you need your Gogmatian weapon to have at least around and over the 245 attack mark. That's the point at which it's worth swapping to these Title Update 4 sets over the previous best Title Update 3 18 new Udra Shadowbringer builds. So for your EFR on this then, so you can see how it compares, well, this is going to come out at 515. And that's really, really solid to say that you have no RNG involved. It's only 5 less than the perfect God roll build from Title Update 3, and will more than get the job done for anything you need it to do. If you're wondering, if you went affinity instead of attack for your Gogmatian weapon, it would be 509, so yeah, 6 less. So that's that then. Now let's kick it up a notch and start introducing layers. This then is your best Title Update 4 set that uses an RNG talisman, but doesn't require any specific RNG set rolls on the Gogmatian weapon. Doesn't need any specific active skills to happen for you. Just pure Title Update 4 equipment and the best talisman that you can possibly get. And this is what it looks like. Very similar to the other, but we essentially just trade that 1 rank of what was agitator for attack 4. And that's using the classic charm that is attack 3, agitator 1. Now that said, this shouldn't actually be agitator. I don't have the ideal charm that this should be, so I'm using this as a stand-in. What this 1 rank of agitator should be is 1 rank of burst. When there's only 1 rank available, yeah, burst will outdo 1 rank of agitator, so imagine that this 1 rank of agitator is burst, which means the talisman could be 3 attack 1 burst, or it could be 3 attack 1 weakness exploit, and then you just replace one of the weakness exploits with a burst. Now it should be said, flayer did get quite the buff in Title Update 4. It's still something that we're testing, but it is looking especially effective, and the first rank of flayer is the most effective rank, so there is every chance that your 1 value rank of something, like the 1 value rank of burst this should have, you could start making an argument for flayer, especially against those harder to wound 9-5 monsters and such. But it's not quite definitive enough yet that I just want to commit to it, but I do want you to be aware that that has potential. In any case, whatever you choose for your 1 rank leftover skill, 1 agi, 1 burst, God forbid 1 flayer, it's not going to make a huge difference to the overall set power. In any case then, yes, this is your best RNG talisman, but nothing fancy yet on the Gogmatian weapon set. Using Ray, New Udra, Bale, Ray, New Udra, and this comes out at a very, very respectable EFR of 533, so a 13 gain over the previous best set. Now, technically, if this attack boost 4 was crit I4, we would get 2 more effective raw in theory, but the amount of uptime you have on the various affinity skills means that you'll spend a good amount of time overcapped on affinity, so the reality isn't that, and pure attack is just a smoother curve throughout the hunt. But hey, if you're sat there on a 3 crit I, 1 burst talisman, don't feel bad at all about using it. It's that can arguably be a tiny bit better. In any case, that's that then. Now let's talk sets that need your Gogmatian to have specific active skill roles. Here we go. First up then, and it should be said that obviously one, I don't have these yet. It would be insanely lucky to have gotten them within a couple days of the title update coming out, but that there. In any case, beyond that, we essentially have in broad strokes 3 air quotes perfect Gogma Artian weapons. Now, one of them is a bit weaker than the other 2, but still is one you'd be happy to see show up, and that's the one we're going to start with. So for your group bonus, you're going to want Lord's Soul. That's going to be a very common theme. You'll see that across pretty much every weapon. And then for your set bonus, you're going to want your Dark Arts, your Bale. And as you can see, if we combine that with what we're already working with here, well, I've got the Bale gloves, so you've got to imagine that the Gogmatian weapon is giving me that second piece of Bale, so we have Dark Arts active. We then use that freed up space to have 2 set gore. Now that's obviously a nice little gain because then we can 3 antivirus and get that tasty bump in affinity. We've only got 2 pieces of Arch Tempered because the weapon is providing that Lord's Soul to make it 3 so that we keep Lord's Soul active. All of this is to say, this combination of Gogmatian rolls and armor gives us 2 set Gore Magala, 2 set Bale, and then Lord's Soul, which is obviously very, very potent. And then here is how all the skills line up with the decorations in. You get your full weakness exploit, counterstrike, maximum might, the antivirus is there, couple points of latent power, and then once again I'm using my stand-in charm. This should be 1 rank of burst instead of 1 agitator, but I don't have it, so 1 agitator is here, and then the usual 4 attack boost. Now if you want a non-RNG crafted version of this, but you still want to have the RNG Gogma weapon, well then you just replace this with a weakness exploit, talisman, and then swap out 2 of the weakness exploit for either agitator or burst, or yes, maybe even that flayer, and you will still be laughing. In any case, this creates quite the potent set, and the numbers speak for themselves. The AFR, when we bring it all together then here, is 541, which is kinda ridiculous, honestly, but it doesn't stop there. Next up, we have this then. You'll notice that we're using 2 pieces of Bale, but only 1 piece of Gore. That's because this is essentially the flip of what we just looked at. For this set, you need to have your rolls on your Gogmatian to be once again Lord's Soul, but then Gore Magala. So we get that 2 set Bale, 2 set Gore, Lord's Soul, but the 2 set Gore is coming from the weapon instead of the armor that we have equipped, and this results in a much higher effective raw. Now the catch here though is that you require a charm that has those 2 extra 1 slot armor slots to fit the antivirus. So yeah, this one really does require a god roll on both ends, but hey, I'm here to show you what's best, so that's exactly what I will do. And it gives you a nice splattering of skills to begin with, and when decorated up, looks a little something like this. 5 weakness exploit, 3 latent power, 3 counterstrike, 3 maximum might, and 3 antivirus. You'll notice then that the gain over the previous set is 1 rank of latent power in exchange for needing these 2 1 slots on the talisman. And again, imagine that 1 agitator is burst. This, when we math it all up, comes to a quite frankly monstrous 552 EFR, which is a 32 gain over title update 3. So, yeah, wow, that has quite the ceiling to search for if you're willing to put in the grind time and get a little bit lucky. And if you're wondering, and I'm sure you are, if you have the maximum possible 257 raw Gogmatian instead of the 248 I'm using as an example in this maths, you reach 570 20 EFR, which is a 50 gain over Title Update 3. The fuck? Wow. Anyway, but fear not, because there is another way to reach this level of EFR, and we can finally use a little bit of the new Transcendent armor. This then is our final option. We replace the gore waist with the Gogmazios coil A, and we of course transcend it up, so it's got those much better skill slots. I say much better, just better. And what this does then is bring the Gogmazios 2 set into play. What the Gogmazios 2 set does, Gogma Might, Powerhouse 1, you gain plus 10 raw for 3 minutes when you offset, which in greatsword terms is just you gain plus 10 raw forever, permanently, which is a pretty good set bonus, honestly. It's just been let down by being attached to garbage armor until now. So as you can imagine, what we need for this set on our Gogmazios Artian is once again Lord Soul as the group skill, but then Powerhouse Gogma as the set bonus. This then will activate 2 set Bale, it will activate 2 set Gogma, and then 3 set Arch-Tempered for Lord's Soul, resulting in another very, very tasty set of skills. This one, you can replace the RNG Talisman by just putting on a Weakness Exploit 2 and then redecorating it as you see fit, but for full RNG, this is what it looks like. Finishing up that Weakness Exploit on top of the already full Latent Power, Counterstrike, Maximum Might, and that one Agitator from the Talisman that should technically be a burst. This then gives us an EFR that is almost identical to the previous set, which is 551, and the advantage this one has is that your uptime on offset and therefore Gogma is going to be more consistent than Magala's Frenzy affinity, and you also don't need an RNG Talisman with the 2 free 1 slots to put antivirus in, so you need less of a god roll on the charm. So in that sense, this is a really strong viable option. So essentially, we do have a few ways you can go. But to summarize then, we have our new title update for no RNG crafted build. It looks like this. Then, if we want to kick it up a notch with the RNG Talisman, the ideal one, it looks like this. Then we have 3 options to bring in the Gogmazios Artian weapons. Roll Lord Soul and Dark Arts as your 2 set skills, and use this set, which will still be a nice increase, but not as much of an increase as rolling the Magala set bonus along with Lord Soul, and then using this set, which is pretty much even and tied with rolling the Gogma set bonus and Lord Soul, and then using this set, and this one requires less of a perfect RNG Talisman, while still maintaining that 550 plus EFR. Hopefully, all of that made sense. You're basically looking for a Gogmazios Artian weapon with Lord Soul and either Dark Arts, Powerhouse, or Magala, and then you have kind of made it in varying different degrees. Whew. And that then is that, or at least my current best estimation of that. Obviously, there's a lot of systems at play in Title Update 4, and no end to the amount of theory crafting and build craft that can be done. I am like 99% confident in these, but hey, I am only human, and the main thing that kind of makes me go, is element, as much as I hate to admit it, but we shall see. Of course, I will update you guys as necessary, but for now, unless anything weird or unexpected comes to the front, these are your best Title Update 4 Greatsword sets, and our new best Title Update 4 Greatsword itself. Gogmazios is awesome, what he's done for the game is awesome, his Greatsword is awesome, and I am a happy hunter. And on that note, I wish you all happy hunts, and until next time, like you've enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more, consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below. A goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.